The film begins in a small town in Ireland, said to be located 6 miles away from a hill where the main work of the people was farming, and the town was famous for a legend about Peter, according to which in the 19th century, writer Bram Stoker came there, and after hearing Peter's story wrote the novel Dracula. In the fields of the town, there was a very old stone structure that had been there for hundreds of years and was believed to be Peter's grave, and local people never touched this cairn because they believed the story, which said that many centuries ago there was a man named Peter who looked like a zombie and drank people's blood, and he was killed by a village leader named Cahan and buried under this cairn with heavy stones placed on top so that he could never come back to life. And people have believed this story for centuries and still believe it today. When the book Dracula became famous in the late 19th century, the town also became well known, and the cairn turned into a tourist place where people from all over the world came. And the local bar was named Bram Stoker, where 2 young men named Eugene and William were drinking, with Eugene being unemployed, broke, and living alone, while William had recently finished university and was temporarily working in Eugene's father's construction company, and they had a friend named Claire who worked in the bar, and all 3 wanted to leave the town because they hated living there. 2 rich Canadian tourists came to the bar, and seeing their money, Eugene took them to show the cairn and told them that Peter was the world's first vampire, and that when anyone goes near him, blood flows like water. And William added that the cairn had been on his father's farm for centuries, and that if someone put their ear on the stone, they could still hear Peter's voice. And when a tourist tried it, vampire-like hands grabbed him, after which it was revealed to be a joke played by their friend Sap, hiding inside the cairn, and the tourists cursed and left. Later, Sap said he wanted to see what was under the cairn once in his life, and William said that if the bypass road project happened, the cairn would have to be broken. And Eugene's father, Francie, was a contractor who owned Moffat Construction, where Sap and William worked as road workers, and breaking the cairn was necessary because it stood in the middle of the road. The next day, Eugene is shown at his house near his mother's farm, where her family had farmed for generations, and where Eugene lived as a child. And his relationship with his father was bad because his mother had died, his parents were divorced, and Francie was not a good father, although Eugene had inherited his mother's house, and Francie gave him a job to pressure William's father, George, who was against breaking the cairn. Eugene later goes into an old underground barn near his house and finds a passage connected to the town's sewer system and discovers a very old human skull with half of it broken. Later in the bar, William talks about going to Australia for a good job. Claire loses her job and plans to join the road work, and a drunk Eugene takes William home, where they fight over Claire near the cairn because both love her. And William cuts his hand on a sharp stone and starts bleeding. At the same time, they hear George screaming as his bull attacks, and the bull charges William and kills him instantly with its horns. And though George pushes it away, it is too late, and Eugene sees William's blood sink into the ground, as if something underneath is drinking it. The next day, police investigate and William's funeral happens, and the town blames Eugene for the death and is angry about the road project because it would break the cairn, and Eugene was involved in it. After some time, Eugene, Claire, and Sap start their daily work. And after a few weeks, the road project reaches the location of the cairn, but George is still not ready to leave his house or allow the cairn to be broken because the cairn is directly in the path of the road. And he strongly tells Eugene not to break the cairn, warning him that doing so could bring the evil back to life. And he questions Eugene about William's blood during his death, but because of guilt, Eugene does not answer. After this, Eugene orders his co-worker Gabriel to break the cairn, but like the rest of the town, he becomes scared and refuses, so Eugene is forced to decide to break the cairn himself. And that night, Eugene and Claire grow closer, and Claire starts to develop feelings for Eugene. The night watchman at the construction site is Charlie, and someone knocks on his cabin door. He opens it, but finds no one outside, and angrily shouts into the air, but when he turns back inside, blood splashes appear on the window, showing that he has been killed. The next day, Francie tells Eugene to manage the work because he is going out of town, and then Eugene and the others see that someone has rebuilt the cairn and Charlie is missing, which confuses Eugene and makes him plan a new way to protect the cairn. That night, when Francie returns and sees that no work has been done, he angrily yells at Eugene, rejects his plan, tells him he is not an engineer, and again orders the cairn to be broken. Charlie is then seen alive in his cabin, but looking sick. And while Eugene is taking him to the hospital in a van, as soon as the sun sets, Charlie turns into a vampire and attacks Eugene, causing an accident, after which Francie, Claire, Sap, and Gabriel help Eugene, but suddenly all the lights go out and Eugene tries to explain that Charlie has turned into a vampire, but no one listens. And when Francie goes to turn the lights back on, someone kidnaps Gabriel. Eugene searches for Charlie in the cabin, and Charlie violently attacks him. But Claire arrives in time and stabs Charlie with a measuring rod that goes straight through his heart and pulls it out, after which Eugene and Claire run away in fear, while Sap and Francie find Gabriel's dead body, and everyone is filled with panic and despair. Then Charlie comes out of the cabin with the rod stuck in his chest and his heart exposed, having become a zombie like Peter, and together they grab the rod and throw him into a pit, but he does not die and starts climbing out using the rod. So Claire dumps soil on him with a JCB machine, yet he still tries to come out, and finally Eugene tells Claire to use stones from another nearby cairn, and when she does this, Charlie is crushed and buried, making them realize that he had become a zombie, and that the only way to kill them is to bury them under stones, giving them brief relief and making them fully believe Peter's story. Suddenly, they see movement in the real cairn, and Peter's real leg comes out from inside because Claire had broken that cairn to bury Charlie, which frees Peter. And seeing this, all four of them run for their lives and reach George's house to tell him everything. But George is not surprised and tells them to call the police, though Eugene cannot explain properly. And then George reveals the truth that he had locked William in a room because he had turned into a zombie like Charlie, had become very violent, and George fed him animals every day. And since George was a funeral director, he had prepared William's body at home. And that night after sunset, William stood up, which George's wife Pauline saw and went into shock. And during the fight with Eugene, a small stone had stuck in William's hand, and George explains that people do not become zombies by vampire bites, but by being cut by Peter's stones, and that the body used in William's funeral was fake. And he also confesses that he attacked Charlie in the cabin and scratched him with Peter's stone to turn him into a zombie so the road project would stop, because his house was in its path. And while saying all this, George starts crying and says that for him, William is still alive, and he believed it was a sickness that could be cured, and he did not want to lose his son. And hearing all this, the four of them are left completely shocked because they had never imagined anything like this, even in their dreams. Eugene comforts George and tells him that what is inside the room is not William, that William is already gone, and what remains is only a zombie curse. And all four of them explain this to George and finally convince him, after which their plan is to attack William with full force to knock him unconscious and then place stones on his body, because this method was written in the novel Dracula. But Francie disagrees with this plan and instead gives a dark yet creative idea that they should trick William and capture him easily so he can be placed inside a coffin. And for this, they prepare a coffin using extra wooden planks while George stands ready with an axe. Eugene goes to William's room, opens the door, and immediately runs back out. And William chases him, but stops because he understands their trick and still has some memories left inside him. Then Claire holds Eugene's hand and provokes William because she knows William liked her, and William angrily moves forward just as George is about to strike him on the head with the axe. But Pauline suddenly attacks George from behind because she had woken up and still believed William was her son, and in her innocence, she goes toward him. But zombie William attacks and kills her, and realizing the plan has failed, the others run out of the house. While in the rush, Eugene forgets to take the car keys, and William comes out of the house, and George shoots him to distract him, but it has no effect because he cannot die. And not wanting to die from a zombie bite, George tries to shoot himself, but William attacks him and eats him alive. After this, we see the town police officer sleeping in his house, who wakes up to urinate and senses something wrong and sees that he is bleeding heavily. While the others have returned and are hiding, with Sap and Eugene hiding under a coffin in the funeral room, and Claire and Francie hiding in another room. And when William checks one coffin, Eugene hammers a nail into his head. Sap pushes him into an empty coffin and calls for help. But William strikes back and rips open Sap's stomach, causing him to bleed badly. And later, Claire, Eugene, and Francie attack William together and somehow lock him inside the coffin and seal it with many nails. But during all this, Sap is fatally injured and dies from blood loss, leaving Eugene and Claire crying because they have lost two childhood friends in just 2 months. Yet the job is not finished as they bury the coffin near George's house and cover it with stones. Meanwhile, the real Peter, who was freed from the cairn, begins roaming the entire town and sucking the blood of everyone, with blood flowing from the bodies of the bar owner, tourists, police, and ordinary citizens into the sewers. And Francie, Eugene, and Claire go to Claire's house where her mother is bleeding while asleep. But these three are not bleeding because they are far from Peter, and Eugene realizes that Peter is likely moving toward the underground barn near his house, the same path connected to the sewer where he found the skull and bones, and he believes that first blood will flow and later even bodies may be washed away. Francie and Eugene go to the old house, and as soon as Francie reaches there, his blood starts to flow, meaning Peter is nearby. But strangely, Eugene's blood does not flow, and Francie notices an old photograph on the wall and realizes that Eugene's mother was a descendant of Cahan, the same chief who buried the original Peter, and he concludes that Eugene has Cahan's blood, and that is why his blood does not flow. And in this terrifying moment, Eugene and Francie grow closer as father and son. But suddenly, Peter appears and attacks them, turning around and breaking Francie's leg with an axe. And Eugene runs out of the room and repeatedly strikes Peter until he knocks him unconscious, then escapes with Francie to the underground barn where the skull was found as morning approaches.